I'm Bobby Hoon, and let's queer up the worldview. Rome Pride faces backlash over ban on Jewish LGBTQ groups. Jewish organizations and anti-Semitism watchdogs are condemning a decision of the Rome Pride Parade organizers that bars Jewish LGBTQ groups from participating unless they publicly condemn Israel over the war in Gaza. The controversy began after Rome Pride organizers announced that Keshet, Italia, and Keshet, Europe would not be allowed to join the June 20th parade with an official float because they had failed to distance themselves from what organizers called the ongoing genocide in Gaza. The decision sparked backlash from Jewish groups across Europe, with critics accusing organizers of applying political conditions specifically to Jewish participants. Shannon Seban, the director of European affairs at the Combat Antisemitism Movement, called the decision a blatant act of anti-Semitic discrimination. Seban said, quote, "When Pride excludes Jews, it betrays the very principles upon which the movement was built. No other minority community is routinely asked to publicly denounce its homeland, distance itself from fellow members of its people, or adopt approved political positions simply to participate in civic life. The weaponization of pride spaces against Jews is unacceptable. Anti-Semitism has no place in the LGBTQ movement." End quote. Keshet, Italia, the only Italian Jewish LGBTQ organization, also accused Pride organizers of remaining silent after alleged anti-Semitic incidents at last year's event. The dispute comes amid growing concern over rising anti-Semitism across Europe since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Similar debates involving Jewish groups and Pride events have surfaced in cities including London, Chicago, Washington, and Brussels. And I was busy this morning, so I didn't actually do a lot of research on this one. Alex, can you tell me what are the rules? What is this particular dispute based on? What rules we're talking about?
It's been very difficult to try and find stuff, partially because I don't speak Italian. But I know that the Jerusalem Post did say that Roma Pride put out a statement saying that everyone was welcome, regardless of sexual orientation and ethnicity or nationality, as long as they do a clear and unequivocal stance condemning the genocide perpetuated by the Israeli government. So I did want to say that, it's been a little hard to figure out what's going on, but their stance, publicly at least, has been, you need to call the what happened in Israel a genocide. And that seems to be part of the dispute because Keshet has not called it a genocide.
And also, I just want to caution the viewers that you're going to see a lot of extreme debates on this one, mostly because there are a lot of conflation of terms. Jewish hatred against Jewish people is anti-Semitic. Protesting certain policies or even the Israeli government and what it is doing is not necessarily anti-Semitic. The whole conflation of if you criticize Netanyahu or name something is something, then you must be anti-Semitic is a common trope used by certain groups to essentially demonize organizations they don't like. The idea that the weaponization of pride against Jewish groups is laughable when the Israeli Foreign Ministry has actively tried to use LGBTQ pride in Tel Aviv, contrasting what they say, what is the anti-LGBTQ treatment of its geopolitical neighbors, and say that, see, we are the enlightened one. We have pride. Lebanon doesn't, Syria doesn't, Iraq throw you off the roof, etc., etc., etc. And therefore, those people are bad, and therefore you must embrace Israel. That has been the through line for years. Every time Israeli cities from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem put up pride festivities. But recently, we just had a show not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, where there was a report from Israel coming out labeling that there's now a huge increase of anti-LGBTQ activities inside Israel, including having government ministers who literally said that being gay or LGBTQ are abominations and they are proud homophobe. So, find a leg to stand on because, or else you're jumping hopscotch.
Well, it's a sad time I think in our world that retaliation seems to be, a tool out there, whether you're talking about the U.S. or in this case, Pride in Italy. It's sad, and it really shouldn't be about having, forcing a group to say what their stance is between Gaza and Israel. It really should just be about celebrating pride and celebrating that people are there to celebrate for a reason, and that's to celebrate the diversity of our LGBTQ community. And there shouldn't be any of this diversiveness. I know that's very Pollyanna of me to say.
I am going to push back on that and defend Roma Pride a dash here. So one, you have two issues going on. Like, there is this conflation of Judaism and Israel. I think that is a crazy thing to do. Unfortunately, countless Jewish organizations do push that narrative. And I'm like, when you do that, people are going to do it back to you. Please don't do that. You shouldn't compare a government to a religion. They're not connected. But unfortunately, like the Anti-Defamation League, it has done that countless times. In Broward County, the vice chair of the Broward Jewish Federation was attacking Lady Bunny for her criticism of Israel, saying it was messaging that appears to single out and vilify Jewish identity. I'm like, is criticizing Israel vilifying Jewish identity? I don't think that's the same thing, but unfortunately you have that going on. But also, like, Israel did commit a genocide, and just as I think I would not want to deal with someone who would deny that there was a genocide that Germany committed in the 1930s and 40s, I would not want to deal with a group that didn't want to acknowledge that Israel committed a genocide. That's not just my views. B'Tselem, the actual Israeli human rights watchdog, did an 88-page report on why it's a genocide based on the leaders' statements and the results, along with the Physicians for Human Rights Israel did a much more deeper breakdown on how it legally meets the definition of genocide because they destroyed the healthcare system. And I'm going to believe the doctors on this. And it's not just Physicians for Israel that has said that the crimes being committed has destroyed the medical community. The New York Times had 65 doctors who were in Israel do an entire New York Times piece on it. One doctor in New York Magazine described how he was just so horrified, and using his words, they incinerated and shredded children like he'd never seen in his 30 years of helping war victims. What Israel has done is a big deal. We do need to discuss it like this, and Roma Pride is doing the right thing.
Roma Pride is not doing the right thing simply because the people that want to march are Italian.
Yeah.
They are not Israeli. They should not have to deny America. They should not have to deny China. They should not have to deny. They should be able to march as Italians. The fact that they're in a social organization, Keshet is not a pro-Israel organization by itself. No one is asking people who believe in the Catholic Church, which still says you can't get married, you can't do this, you can't do that. No one is asking the Catholic Italians to deny the church. Why should one group be subjected to that and another group not? That's the part.
Genocide is a very different thing. If an LGBTQ group denied the Holocaust, I would be horrified and would never do a pride event with them.
But that's not part of joining a pride parade.
That's most certainly. So you're telling me that if Stonewall Pride had a group that came in and they were praising or denying a genocide of some kind, you would be okay with them marching?
Why would?
Can you answer the question? I want you to answer that question. That's a serious question. We're talking about real lives. If you're okay with that, then say it. If not, then say it.
The point is, I'm not sure why you would ask that question of people who want to march in your parade unless they're there carrying kill.
Yeah, I mean, they're
standing up for being LGBTQ in a pride parade is far different than going to that pride parade to promote your political agenda overseas. So no, nobody who walks in and says, we're here to represent should be allowed to march. But it is questionable if that question should be asked unless it's asked of everybody.
They literally put out a statement saying they asked that of everyone. Now, I will admit that I did not speak Italian,
and I don't know if there was a questionnaire that was sent to every single group.
The group is saying that is their statement. Keshet is saying that they don't want to call it a genocide. That is my understanding of the dispute with the two of them.
Right, but we don't know what's true because we're not reading
and to my knowledge, we cannot find any other group saying that they're have a problem with calling it a genocide. And remember, Italy, like Spain and Ireland, are much more comfortable denouncing Israel.
And that's fine, whether they denounce it. But this isn't Israel. This is Rome.
Yeah, and I'm talking about how people in Italy view the war crimes and genocide done by the Israel government.
I don't really care what she has to say. I don't.
Let me pull it back a little bit and just say that in the previous time, before this war, there were also other controversies that erupted in the queer space when it comes to participation in Pride. For example, LGBTQ cops and cops specifically were under considerable pressure to not participate in Pride because of the Black Lives Matter protest. And there are other groups that are embracing Black Lives Matter, but were excluded from parades because the organizers do not like the message. So fundamentally, Pride is a very political thing. Pride parades have always been extremely political. I'm not going to take a side on this one because I think Robert's point is correct, is that no organization should wade into foreign policy or at least things that they do not want to wade into. If Keshet wants to have a float with the theme that's basically "We Love IDF," yes, I would definitely have a problem with that. I would absolutely have a problem with that. But if it is just basically Star of David or Star of David on pride flags waving around on a float, I would have no problem with that. This comes down to what the message of the float is. It comes down to what the type of participation or the type of rhetoric, what are you trying to convey on that float? If it has nothing to do with Gaza, there's no reason to actually ask what their opinion of Gaza is.
It's just very reminiscent of New York St. Patrick's Day parade. Mm-hmm. Gays were not allowed to march. If they could march with any other group, but they could not march as gay people.
I think trying to compare people trying to take a noble stance to say that human rights violations like what Israel's done is same to the St. Patrick's Day parade is quite disturbing.
That's a human rights violation.
No,
it's a human rights violation.
Okay. One has been accused by countless doctors of shooting children. One doctor said, you don't shoot toddlers twice. And that's not the same thing as not allowing queers into the St. Patrick's Day parade.
But that is human rights.
It is not
a human rights violation.
The St. Patrick's Day
you either have a violation or you don't have a violation. You don't have to be choosing which one is bigger, which one is smaller. A violation is a violation.
It is not a violation to say we're going to take a stance as a pride parade. If you don't want to take that stance with us, you don't get to be in our parade. That is
That's what the Catholic Church did about St. Patrick's Day.
If
you take a stance that you're gay,
the Catholic Church does not control the St. Patrick's parades in the United States, sir. I have no idea where you get that information from.
What?
You just said the Catholic Church was controlling
the Catholic Church in New York gave a decision that went through the parade people and said you
separate committee. The church does not control the New York St. Patrick's committee.
It certainly did.
There were Catholics on it, but the way you're implying
it is very different. The Hibernian committee that runs the parade was beholden to the Catholic Church. That's where a lot of the money comes from.
I've never heard that they were beholden. That's a little off topic of this story.
Yes, let's bring it back to topic. And on that note, it's a very contentious topic here. I'm sure it will stay contentious for as long as this conflict will go on. There is no other queer non-profit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by sharing them and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.